So have you my voice and picture also?
Yeah, we can't see you. Can you show your webcam? So
Yeah.
yeah, we can see you. Yeah. Bismillah. Yeah, we can start.
So,
Bismillah.
Bismillah.
I think by mistake our Javadi clicked and logged out. Let him log in again.
Joining us. So we started from what finished last week, and we talked about different branches of ethic evolution. Ethics, according to our understanding, has two main parts. One is normative part, which is called ethical theories, and the second is meta-ethics. So we start explaining some of ethical theories at first, and then in next weeks we come to explain meta-ethical issues. So at first, I just remember what we concluded last week. An ethical theory is a normative part of ethics that explains why a particular action or kind of action is right or wrong, or is good and bad. So this is what we call ethical theory. Indeed, it gives us the standard for assessing moral judgments and principles. It shows us the source or sources of moral goodness and obligation, goodness and obligatory. There are many ethical theories, but we concentrate only on the most important theories. Eudaimonistic virtue ethics, these theories are supposed to be discussed in our lectures in the next, because we have more than maybe 10 ethical theories, try to explain why this is good, why this is bad, and some of them are not so common and only as a possible theory for explanation, not accepted for many people or many scholars. But these important theories are accepted by many scholars and are prominent, are famous. So we discuss these ethical theories: Eudaimonistic virtue ethics, Kantian deontology, utilitarianism, divine command ethics, and cultural relativism. These are the theories we will discuss in next week, inshallah, starting from today. There is another part of ethics called meta-ethics. It is a second-order knowledge, namely, it is about the institution of morality. Meta-ethics doesn't give us a guide for moral behavior or character, but it talks about ways for explanation and justification of morality, our morality. It is an analytic and critical study of morality. So the most important difference between ethical theory and meta-ethics is this. The conclusion of ethical theory help us to find a way for our moral behavior or moral conduct. So it helps us to assess and to judge about different moral beliefs, to know good or bad action or character, to know the right or wrong. This is the conclusion of ethical theory. But the conclusion of meta-ethics is not by itself guidance for our life. It is about the explanation or even justification of the guide or of the ethical theories. It is not by itself help us to know what is good or what is bad. It helps us to justify our beliefs about good or bad, to justify our beliefs about good character or bad character. It is not firstly about our moral behavior. So we can say that ethical theory is first order knowledge of morality, and metaethics is a second order knowledge of morality. This is the difference between them. So we start from ethical theories. The first ethical theories, according to the historical order we will discuss, is called Eudaimonistic virtue ethics. But first I refer to the history of this, and then to the definition of Eudaimonistic virtue ethics, and then to the foundation or components of Eudaimonistic virtue ethics. It is the oldest ethical theory articulated and developed by Greek philosophers and accepted by many Christians and Muslim philosophers along with history. So you see some famous figures of philosophy like Plato, Avicenna, Aristotle, and Aquinas and Avicenna. Many names can be included in the defender of this theory. So Eudaimonistic virtue ethics has been largely forgotten since the Renaissance, but it has seen revival after the middle of the 20th century, thanks to the works of moral philosophers such as Anscombe and Alistair MacIntyre. After maybe Hume was the shifting point in this issue. After Hume, we see a sort of negligence or forgottenness of this eudaimonistic virtue ethics. But in the modern time, by the work of some famous scholars like Anscombe or MacIntyre, there is a revival of this theory, and we see again this theory. And actually, there are many defenders of this theory. Some of them are famous scholars and famous philosophers. So the first systematic discussion of it can be found in Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, the most influential book in the history of ethics. So this is the most famous book or most influential books in the history of ethics. So there are many translations of this book. Some of the translations you see, there are maybe translations into Arabic, into Farsi, into many other languages, but these translations are famous and accepted by many scholars, and I also use the translation of Trans Erwin in this discussion. So we come to the definition. The term eudaimonia is a classical Greek word commonly translated as happiness, but perhaps better described as well-being or human flourishing or good life. So there is a difficulty, or there is a controversy about the exact translation of the word eudaimonia. This is, as you know, a classical Greek word, means eudaimonia. The better translation is well-being or human flourishing or good life, not happiness. But in many of the translation, it is equivalent to, accepted as equivalent to happiness. But there are many reasons for preferring the other translation, well-being or human flourishing or good life. So virtue ethics initially emphasizes the virtues or moral character, in contrast to approaches emphasizes duties or rules, the ontology, or that emphasizes the consequences of action, which we call consequentialism. So there are three prominent ethical theories, which are virtue ethics or eudaimonistic virtue ethics, the ontological ethics, consequentialism. The main difference between virtue ethics from two other famous ethical theories deontology and consequentialism is this point, that in virtue ethics, the basic concept of morality is character rather than action. You know, in deontology, the focus is always on action. So they say that this action must be done, this action is right, and that action is wrong. So they are not talking about the virtue originally. The basic, cornerstone of morality in deontological theories like divine command ethics or like Kantian ethics are the concepts of virtue, concepts of the actions. So this action must be done, this is obligatory and that is not obligatory. Also in the consequentialism, in consequentialism also focus will be on the action, because in consequentialism, what is important morally is the results or the achievements we reach by this action. So the action is cornerstone of morality in consequentialism and in deontology. But in virtue ethics, action is derivative situation, has derivative situation, as it's not basic. The basic concept is character. So if, for example, an action be done from a good character, so that action will be good or that action will be right. The right action is rooted in good character. So character is the basis of action. But in contrast, in deontology or in consequentialism, the moral basis are actions. And if we talk about the virtues, will be derivative, and so it is not original concept in consequentialism or in deontology. So this is main point, differ virtue ethics from both deontological ethics or consequentialism. So the distinctive feature of eudaimonistic versions of virtue ethics is that they define virtues in terms of their relationship to eudaimonia. A virtue is a trait that contributes to or is a constitutive of eudaimonia, and we ought to develop virtues, the eudaimonistic claims, precisely because that contributes to eudaimonia. So the relation between virtue and eudaimonia, or well-being or happiness or different human flourishing, the relation is very firm. So what makes some dispositions of our mentality of our soul, or what makes some traits virtue and some vices, is their contribution to the eudaimonia. If some virtue help us to reach to eudaimonia, this will be virtue. If some trait of our souls obstacles us from reaching to the eudaimonia, that will be vices. So this is the definition. The most philosophical discussion we have here is this point, is this issue. So the title is the teleological metaphysics as the basis of eudaimonism. Have you my voice, or you have difficulty here? So everything itself is pursuing ends or goals or designed to fulfill a purpose devised by that transcends nature. So it's not, I don't see my PDF, and so I use this to. So everything itself is pursuing ends or goals or designed to fulfill a purpose devised by a mind transcends nature. So this is the main philosophical background of eudaimonism in Aristotle and many Muslim or Christian philosophers. According to idea or this understanding or this cosmology, everything, for example, a person like me or you is pursuing ends or goals freely, or designed to fulfill a purpose devised by a mind that transcends nature. This refers to human and animals, because in the case of humanity, human being is pursuing it themselves ends or goals, but in the case of animals, they are designed to fulfill a purpose devised by a mind that transcends nature. So this is the main idea according to Aristotle, because eudaimonia is based on this conception of human life or human being or animal being or everything. This is also a religious idea, because also in the novel Quran or many other narratives or even in Christian ideas. So you see that everything is created for fulfilling some end. There is no, according to the verse of there is no thing which has no purpose. All things have purpose and pursuing ends or goals in the world. So everything itself is pursuing ends or goals or designed to fulfill a purpose devised by a mind that transcends nature. Teleology from Greek telos means end and logos means reason, is the explanation by reference to some purpose, end, goal, or function as the final cause. So the final cause means the end that for the sake of which a thing is done. Health is the end of walking, losing weight, purging drugs and surgical tools. This is one form of explanation given answer to the why question. So we have 4 forms or 4 kinds of answer to why question. If you have a why question for why this is done, we have or this why this is made, we have 4 forms or 4 kinds of explanation or answers to this question. One is called material cause or formal cause, and third effective efficient cause, and the 4th is final cause. So here final cause is very important for explanation of our actions, and everything is equal. So this is the idea, the main idea of teleological philosophy. Aristotle accused in modern time of having this idea that everything is made for doing something. So they say that this is a religious idea, this is not a philosophical idea. So Aristotle accused in the view of some atheist philosophers of having a religious idea. So this idea of teleological conception of the world or the humanity is very important for eudaimonism. So the second point, everything is equipped with the power or powers for attaining its ends, but it doesn't mean the guarantee for the attainment. There are conflicts between the things in the way of fulfilling their ends. After accepting that everything is, created or come to the world for pursuing some special or appropriate ends, and all things are in the movement or motion from some potentiality to find their actualities. This is the idea of teleological metaphysics. But in the second point, we know that everything is equipped with the power or powers for attaining its ends. So, for example, human being has some faculties and some potentialities and some powers to find his special or his appropriate end. But it doesn't guarantee, it doesn't mean that we have guarantee for the attainment of our ends, because, for example, we have two sorts of failure in the way of attaining the our well-being or our good life, or actualizing our end. We have two sort of obstacles. One is called natural evils, because there are a conflict between different persons or different things in the way of fulfilling their ends, because sometimes I try to fulfill my end, but suddenly encounter with the death, prevent me from attaining the end. So this is called natural evils. But in the case of human being, we have also another reason or another case for failure in attaining their ends. That is called moral evils, because by misusing, for example, my lust or anger are our main faculties and are very important in our life, attaining our happiness, our well-being, because without lust or without anger, we do not power to go to the end and find our end. But sometimes misusing lust or misusing anger make us of having the end, or prevent us from reaching to the end. So in the case of human being, we have two sorts for failure, which the first is called natural evils and the second is called moral evils. So we have point to fundamental basis, philosophical basis. The first is that everything itself, either itself, is pursuing ends or goals by his free choice, in the case of humanity, or designed to fulfill a purpose devised by a mind that transcends nature. In the case of animals, so human beings freely pursue their ends, but animals, pre-established or by determination, they go in the way of fulfilling their ends. This is the first philosophical assumption. The second is that we are equipped with the power or powers for attaining our goals, other ends. So this is the second point. So what is important for us as distinguished kind of animals is to know our appropriate ends or telos. So I discussed, or I proposed this idea to come to the main question, which is important for virtue ethics or for eudaimonistic virtue ethics. What is important for us as distinguished kind of animals is to know our appropriate telos or ends. So how we can find our appropriate ends? What is our different ends in our everyday life? I, for example, try to eat something, this is my end, or to make money and to find money, to have wealth, or to have wealth, to be health, different, to have friends, different things can be can be enumerated as my ends. there are many ends. All of my works go to the some ends. So what is important is to find the appropriate end for human being, or the highest end for human being. This is the main task of philosophical study of human being, according to virtue ethics. So the question is, what is important? So the question, how is possible for me to find my appropriate end? This is very important philosophical question, and is a starting point for my follow the explanation of the concept of well-being or happiness in virtue ethics, and then in Islamic ethics next week, inshallah. So, according to Aristotle, this is possible by knowing our differentia, what makes humanity distinguished from other animals or plants, or from other living things. You know that Aristotle uses two very technical terms, genus and differentia. Genus is the shared property between me and for other animals or other living things, because they also have the same property that I have. But the differentia, or in Arabic al-fasl, genus, and genus means gens and fasl. Differentia means fasl, what make humanity distinguished from other animals or plants. So according to Aristotle, the proper or appropriate end of everything can be found by reference to the differentia of that thing. If you try to find, for example, a proper or appropriate end for some animal, so it must be found in the distinguishing character or differentia of that animal. So it differs from, for example, other sorts of animals. If you try to find the well-being or appropriate end of human being, at first you must find the differentia of human beings. So this is the task of moral philosophers, and even so another technical term, I try to use not much technical term, but sometimes I need to introduce some of technical terms used in moral discussions or moral philosophy. One of the technical terms is ergon argument. So the good for everything is related to the good functioning of its differentia. This is the case even in the man-made things, such as a knife. For example, this is the example Aristotle himself gives. If you want to know which knife, this knife or that knife is better or is good, what is the criteria for assessing the goodness of this knife or that knife? Before understanding the characteristic of knife, or according to philosophical terms, without understanding the differentia of a knife, you cannot assess or you cannot judge about the goodness or badness of that or this knife. So your judgment about goodness of this knife or that knife, or badness of this or that knife, is related or is due to your understanding of the, this is a man-made thing, natural thing. So if you come to the creator of the knife, for example, inventor of knife, or so ask him the purpose or what is the character it is cutting. So you can say that this knife is better than that knife, even although sometimes that knife is from gold or from very good things, but if cutting is not good, so that is not good knife. Maybe that is very important thing or very expensive thing, but it's not good knife. Goodness of a knife is related to the differentia, is cutting. So in the case of humanity, and this is also common in other things such as fork, and so a good knife or the good for a knife. Some scholars say that there is a difference between a good knife or the good for a knife, but many reject it and they say that this is the same thing. This is the same for the good for a knife. Will be in its good cutting. So this is called ergon argument. The form of argumentation, this form of argumentation is called ergon or function argument, because goodness or badness of a thing or of a person to its differentia, not to other shared properties of that person or of that thing, because everything or every person has different shared properties with other things. Human being also has, body, so share in this things. Many things has body, animals or plants, or even non-living things. So ergon argument is that if you try to find the goodness or badness of a thing or a person, you must concentrate on its special function or differential, not on or shared properties. So this is called ergon argument, or ergon means function argument. This form of argumentation is called ergon or function argument. By this argument, we can find that our approach appropriate and consist of the good functioning. So, but what is our differential? If you see most of ethical books in Islam, for example, Tahdhib al-Akhlaq of Ibn Miskwe, last week I referred to it, or Akhlaq al-Nasiri, or Jamal Sa'adat, or many ethical books, at first, or even Ghazali's Ihya ul-Ulum of Ghazali, revival of the sciences, all talking about the virtues of vices or talking about the rights and wrongs. At first, they try to give you some of the soul of human soul. Humanity is, unified with his soul, not with his body. His body is just just an end for his soul. His soul is the self of the human being. So they at first try to something about the soul, and we can say that they have some sort of philosophical psychology. But the question is, the science of soul, or psychology or philosophical psychology, is not related to ethics, because in ethics we try to find the good or bad action and right and wrong action. We are not, trying to give an explanation of the human soul. So why they start their book by the first chapter about discussions about the human soul? This is the main answer. This is the answer because they are following a sort of eudaimonistic virtue ethics, because they using ergon argument, because they try to find the human differentia, because they accepted this form of accepted that if we try to find a good life for human being, at first we need to know what is a human being, what is a real human being, what is the essence of a human being, what is the differentia of human being, because the essence of everything is related to its differentia, not to its genus, because essence of a human being is not just walking or just movement, because we can find this in other animals or other living things. But essence of human being is rationality or reason. So this is the answer, or this is the reason for them, for Muslim philosophers. I don't remember, or I don't now any book that not started from this anthropology or psychology, philosophical psychology. So to this point, I can summarize what I talked and said. I am talking about the eudaimonistic virtue ethics as an ethical theory, as an important ethical theory, or one of the prominent ethical theory. Sometimes only called virtue ethics, without referring to eudaimonistic virtue ethics, because all virtue ethics in the old or in the history was eudaimonistic. But some of modern virtue ethics try to make or to articulate a virtue ethics without referring to eudaimonia or eudaimonia, without being eudaimonistic. But just to know, I'm talking about the famous or prominent version of the virtue ethics, which is eudaimonistic, according to old history of Greek or Muslim or Christian philosophy. So I'm talking about eudaimonistic virtue ethics at first. I said something about eudaimonia, according to definitions of eudaimonia, and said something about the eudaimonistic virtue ethics, but came to the explanation of the foundation or philosophical assumptions for virtue ethics, because virtue ethics is based on philosophical ideas. It is not based only on, for example, our desires or other needs or our, for example, preferences. It has a very sophisticated metaphysics at its background. So it is important for virtue ethics theory, defenders of virtue ethics, at first to explain, to justify, or to defend their metaphysical basis of that idea. So this is an argument, and the main question for us is, what is our differentia? As I told, in all Muslim ethical books, even in not philosophy books, or even in, for example, religious ethics like Ulum of Al-Ghazali, you see that at first they are talking about human soul or human differentia, because they accepted ergon argument that our well-being as essential value as the basis of assessing right action or wrong action, or good character or bad character, as the source of moral values, as the standard for knowing good and bad, is related to our differential. So they say that reason as our differential. Human being has different layers, and it is composed of different tools and faculties, such as reason, anger, and lust. Three famous faculties of human being, according to Islamic philosophy, anthropology, because they say that we have three faculty of reason, faculty of anger, and faculty of lust. Some of these tools and faculties can be found in the other animals, but the only thing that is not shared by the animals is the reason. So they say that reason is our differential. So if suppose for us to have eudaimonia or to have well-being, it must be related to our reason. It is not the fulfilling of anger or lust. It must be in fulfilling or flourishing our reason, because we are our reason, because we are unified with our reason. Other things are only instrumentals for our reason. So this is the main idea for having a rational conception of human well-being. According to Aristotle, the real end of a human being, or eudaimonia or well-being, is to actualize special faculty, not the common faculties such as anger and lust. This is famous of Aristotle. Flourishing reason. So but this is the very important point. Some people say that flourishing reason is by removing, for example, neglecting lust and anger. And so they ask a question. For what reason we have lust, or for what reason we have anger, if it is supposed that we only flourish our reason or practice our reason. So what the reason for having anger or lust? Are they additional things in our soul? The answer is not, because flourishing reason does not mean abolishing the shared powers, but it means that they must be in control of reason. Flourishing of reason does not mean removing. Some people think this like this, but it is not accepted. The good life of humanity is not the life of reason alone, because in this world we cannot have a life of reason alone. Maybe in afterlife we have that there are also different faculties, and so we have faculty of eating, faculty of lust, and many other faculties. But some people say that it is possible for us in afterlife to have a life of reason alone, only a life of theory, or not a life of practice. But this is not religious idea. The good life of humanity is not the life of reason alone, but it is a life full of different activities in the control of reason. So the main point is the control of reason. So well-being does not exclude satisfying our desires, lust, or our wants, anger, but only keep them in the control of reason. So I'm talking about some characteristics of eudaimonia. These points are also important for having a good conception of eudaimonia. All the points I made and will make in the future about the eudaimonia is just to help us, to help me or you, to find an accurate conception of eudaimonia, because without this, there will be some confusions between virtue ethics or egoism or other forms of not accepted, theories. So, but if we have a good idea of eudaimonia, then we will distinguish, for example, virtue ethics from egoism or other sorts of ethical theories. Some of them we will discuss in the future. So, eudaimonia or well-being is not subjective. This is very important. Life of reason is a life in the frame of a plan that really perfective for us. Some people, for example, Hume, say that moral goodness or rightness is depend on our desires. Our desires is the basis. Our subject is the basis of assessing the goodness or badness. Some people following Hume, and they go further than Hume, also denying the realism of moral properties or realism of moral eudaimonia, and they depend all things, all moral values on just emotions or desires. So, but according to our understanding or Greek understanding of eudaimonia or well-being, it is not subjective, because sometimes our desires correspond to this objective plan, because eudaimonia is, according to our understanding, the end which is designed or which is articulated before that I come to the real world, before my birth, before the human coming to the world, just by God's plan. There are something perfected for human being. This is the eudaimonia. This is good life of human being. So it is related to human being, yes, but it is not dependent on human desires. Sometimes human desires correspond to this objective plan, but sometimes they are not. Contrast to the plan, according to the verses of Quran, the novel Quran. Also, we have some verses, for example, asa an tukrahu shay'an wa huwa khayrun lakum wa asa an tuhibbu shay'an wa huwa sharrun lakum wallahu ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun. It may be that you dislike something which is good for you, and it may be that you love something which is bad for you, and Allah knows and you do not know. So this is the basic of objectivity of eudaimonia, good life, or consequentially, because good life or happiness or eudaimonia is the source of moral value. So moral value, because depending on good life, are objective, because good life is objective, because good life for me, good life of human being is not dependent according to my desires. It is planned for me by God to reach to this point as perfection of my life. So this is the meaning of objectivity of eudaimonia. So this is the reason that some prefer do not translate eudaimonia to happiness, because happiness, has a tone of subjective conception, because happiness means a sort of pleasure or a sort of subjective thing. So the first point is eudaimonia or well-being is not subjective. And as I told, life of reason is a life in the frame of a plan that really perfective for us. Sometimes our desires correspond to this, but sometimes they are in contrast to the plan. Eudaimonia is not relative to each person. It's a very important point, because one of the accusations of virtue ethics, Aristotelian ethics, in contrast to, for example, Kantian ethics, they say that Kantian ethics is a sort of absolute ethics, because it asks to do this thing, ask all human beings to do this thing, to do not lie, for example, to tell truth in every situation, in every condition. So this is a sort of absolute moral duty for human beings in the case of Kant. But they accuse Aristotle of having a relativistic conception of eudaimonia or human well-being, because they say that moral duties or moral prescriptions differ from some person to another person, because for example, we have some sort of goodness or badness or obligation for child and not for adult, and for this person, not for that person. We will talk about this concept in the future. But here I'm referring to this point. Eudaimonia is not relative to each person per se. According to Aristotle, we have common essence, and our well-being is related to this shared essence of humanity. This is called essentialism in Aristotelian philosophy, or in Islamic philosophy, essentialism. This is also one of the ideas rejected by Hume and many other scholars of modernity, because they say that every person has his special essence and there is no shared essence between that person and that person. So they reject essentialism. But one of the philosophical assumptions for eudaimonistic virtues is accepting the essentialism. According to this idea, or as Aristotle says, we have a common essence and our well-being is related to this shared essence of humanity. So it is related to humanity in general and not to each person separately. Here it is important to refer to a similarity between medicine and ethics. In the case of medicine, medicine give a treatment to this person. We have, for example, both person A and B, both refer to expert in medicine and ask him to have treatment for their healthy and cure. So he, the expert, give one treatment to this person and another treatment for that person. So some people may say that this is not okay, because medicine will be relative and healthy will be relative, but this is not true, because the differences or different treatments doesn't show the different or relative conception of healthy. Same conception for this person and that person. It doesn't differ from that person to this person. Healthy has the same meaning in both cases, but what is different is the treatment. Treatment is the way to reach to happiness. Yes, this differ from that person to that. In the case of eudaimonia, also the same. Human being has the, same essence. So the concept of eudaimonia or well-being is the same for all persons. There is no difference in the case of human well-being or eudaimonia. Eudaimonia for me also is controlling our desires or our, keeping them in the light of reason. For you also the same meaning, but because we have some different situations, we need to have different prescriptions. The prescriptions or a special treatment for different people doesn't mean the relativism of, for example, medicine or relativism of ethics. So this is one of the most important points. Eudaimonia is not relative to each person per se. According to Aristotle, we have a common sense, and our well-being is related to this shared essence of humanity. It is related to humanity in general and not to each person separately. Although there are different prescriptions for attaining happiness for each person, but it is similar to the different treatments given by the medicines for each person. This doesn't mean that the healthy or well-being are relative. So we conclude that eudaimonia is the perfective, final, and most comprehensive end. We have different ends, but eudaimonia is the perfective, the most perfective, and the final, and the most comprehensive end. Aristotle, in his first chapter of book 1 of his Nicomachean Ethics, at first, very shortly and very briefly, without going in detail, reject some idea of eudaimonia of happiness, and then come to give different or more accurate reasons for this rejection in the last chapter, in the chapter 10 or book 10 of his Nicomachean Ethics. So at first he answer to reject to some idea common in about pleasure, about happiness, and then come to explain in more details and reject in more sophisticated ways. But I just refer to some of maybe 3 of his points in this last slide, and then conclude my lecture. Eudaimonia is not the life of pleasure. Some people, thinks that eudaimonia is just pleasure. They are called hedonistic conception of eudaimonia. They say that we only must, aim at finding pleasure or joys, and there is no other reason for doing something. So the reason for doing something or justification for doing something is finding pleasure, avoiding pain, and this is the famous idea. But Aristotle says the many, the most vulgar, would conceive the good and happiness as pleasure, and hence they also like the life of gratification. In this, they appear completely slavish, since the life they decide on is a life for grazing animals. So you see here that you reject the idea of pleasure to be our happiness by referring to the point that I already told, because in finding pleasure, we are not, a special racial situation, because all animals graze same with us. So pleasure cannot be our happiness. It is a sort of happiness for animals in general. But of human being, the last chapter, Aristotle give more accurate reason. But here, just this is maybe the second page of Nicomachean ethics, just as a ad hoc reasoning against pleasure, against equivalence between and eudaimonia. But in that chapter, in last chapter, for example, he give more ideas against unifying pleasure with happiness. I will refer it in some of other lectures to discuss about the pleasure and its status or its situation or its place in morality. So according to Muslim scholars, according to philosophic ideas. So then I remark and discuss in more detail. But here just to refer to one point, Aristotle says an argument, because according to our good life, our well-being, because it is not special to human being. It is sort of common ends all animals have. So it is eudaimonia is not the honors. Aristotle says, some people say that because they are cultivated people or active in political issues, take eudaimonia in having successful life or honors, or every person admit or praise them. And so this is happiness for them. This is good life for them. But according to Aristotle, this is also not the good life. It does. He doesn't mean that honor is bad thing. No, he just say that honor is not equivalent with happiness. Is not happiness. Is not unified, or is not equivalent to good life. It may included in good life, but it is not good life. Like pleasure may be included in good life, but it is not good life. Good life is more deeper than pleasure. So here also he says, Aristotle says, eudaimonia is not the honors. Aristotle says some conceive it as honors. This, however, appears to be too superficial to be what we are seeking. The very good point for rejecting this is this: for it seems to depend more on those who honor than on the one honored. Whereas we intuitively believe that the good life is something of our own and hard to take from us. According to Aristotle, happiness is, rooted in our soul, is not dependent on the honors some people give us, because in some time the person who gave some honor to me may, take it from me. So what is important is that eudaimonia is not the life of honor or life of successfulness or life of, degrees or positions or political positions or situations. There is not a good life for human being. Also, eudaimonia is not the life of wealth. Aristotle says the money maker's life is in a way forced on him, not chosen for itself. And clearly wealth is not the good we are seeking, since it is merely useful choice forcing only for some other end. So this is one of the good line of argumentation for rejecting what Aristotle calls external goods, such as health or wealth, and then healthy or wealth, and many other things, honor or pleasure. Because he says that why I try to, find money. It is in a way forced on me, not chosen for itself. I'm not choose money for itself. It is necessary for me to find money because I need, for example, healthy. Another thing, money is not for itself. Money is an instrument to find other goods. So it is not possible to be a final end. It is not possible to be a higher end. As I told you, Eudaimonia is a more inclusive end, or more important end, more higher end. So this is the idea. The money maker's life is in a way forced on him, not chosen for itself. And clearly, wealth is not the good we are seeking, since it is merely useful, choice worthy. So here can refer to, maybe 3 sorts of goods which we find in Aristotle's books or in virtue ethics. There are external goods. External goods means that the goods we use as useful or as an instrument to reach to higher goods. For example, money, friendship, or honor, or pleasure, or other things. We try to have them, but not for them. So the case of pleasure is more, confusion, or more have more complexities. It need be discussed in detail in the next lecture. But money, or wealth, or health, or honor, and even pleasure and friendship, all are external goods. They are not so selected or chosen for themselves. They are for grasping another goals, another ends. So they are external goods. But he also refers to 2 sorts of goods, not external, internal. One is moral goods, like courage, like wisdom, or forgiveness, or moral goodness, which is related to our cognitive side, our will, our heart. And the third are epistemic goods, or intellectual goods, which are related to our knowing part, or our knowing faculty of human beings. So this is some ideas about human eudaimonia. In the next chapter, in the next week, we try to talk about the virtues of related to the eudaimonia according to virtue ethics. But in the next week, we give some additional points which are invented or given by Muslim philosophers, especially Ghazali and some maybe contemporary moral philosophers. Then we try to find some propositions for completing or correcting some errors in Aristotelian virtue ethics or Eudaimonistic virtue ethics, or giving different conceptions of happiness is different from Aristotelian conception of happiness. We're talking about the errors of Aristotle in this regard, and completing the Eudaimonistic virtue ethics by proposing some ideas, and then go to the other ethical attention. I'm ready to have some answers or questions.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Javadi. Is it okay if I speak the question?
Salam alaikum. Yes, yes.
I was just thinking about the urban argument and using the example of a knife and its function. Sometimes people might compromise on how well a knife cuts for its beauty or its aesthetic things. I was just wondering what Eudaimonian ethics would say about that sort of argument?
Yes. Technology sometimes make us near to the point, and sometimes become near to the point, sometimes obstacle, you know, in the way of having a point. So I just refer to the knife because in the case of knife, we all have a good idea about its differentia, because it is a man-made thing. So we have knowledge of what we made knife. So this is very, you know, good example. But in the case of human being, because we are not the builder or the, you know, creator of human being, so it is difficult to find that what is the end, or what human being for what is made. This is difficult. If we want to find the reason or find the you know, end of human being only by our reason, it is very difficult. So some of Muslim philosophers like Avicenna here refer to achievements of, you know, the religions, and refer to the points we can find in the, for example, Noble Quran narrations, to find the good end of human beings. So, but yes, you're right. In some case, in the case of knife, we see that we can, you know, attribute some sort of beauty or expensiveness to this knife. But my issue is that it is not a good knife. It is a good thing, for example, as a, you know, as a good beauty or expensive thing. It is not good knife with this regard. This attribution of beauty or expensiveness, or, you know, other properties to this knife, it doesn't make it better knife than this knife. With regard to the property of being knife, that one is better without any beauty or any additional properties, expensive, you know, materials. If this cuts better than that, this is good knife, but that one is good thing, not knife. Good stone, or good example bronze, or good and more expensive things. So this is the point. In the case of human being, the human, for example, being, if have a very good and beautiful body, yes, this is good body, this is very good and beauty body, but this is not good person, this is not good human being, according to Ergun argument, because Ergun argument assumes that, according to Muslim philosophers, for example, you see I'm not sure it is translated into English or not. Maybe Bidayatul Hikmah translated into, because Allama Tabatabai has two good.
Yeah, Bidayatul Hikmah is translated.
Bidayatul Hikmah, yes, well, good introductory books about Islamic philosophy. In one of these books, and Hayatul Hikmah, or maybe in Bidayatul Hikmah, he says that the main you know, basis of judging about human being is not shared properties of human being, because in this respect, we can say that he is a good animal, or his anger or his loss is more you know, serious, so we can say that it is good animal, or it is good, like, for example, a liar or lion, or every. But if we want to talk about human goodness, we need to concentrate on his differential, on his reason. But as I told, concentration of reason doesn't exclude other powers, because they are powers for the good life of humanity, but they must be in control of reason. This is the idea. So in the case of knife, yes, you are right. We can say that that knife, although it is not, that doesn't cut good, but it is good with other respect, with beauty or with art or other things better than this one. But it doesn't a good knife. It doesn't a good, for example, human being. Although he has a very beautiful face or a very, powerful body, it is not human arete according to Greek conception, or his excellences of human being as human being, not as animals or so. This is the idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there are many questions in chat. I think this is the debate between eudaimonia and hedonism. And yes, I think this is the debate between. Yes, there is an important issue about the relation of hedonism and eudaimonia. I think one of the most neglected issues in Islamic ethics, even in, for example, Christianity, in religious ethics, is the place of pleasure in moral life, because sometimes we have not good idea about pleasures in general, and think that pursuing pleasure or trying to find pleasure is against our moral life. This is not good idea. Yes, I accept hedonism, or I reject hedonism, because hedonism take the basis of morality as pleasure. This is not good idea. This is not accepted by Islamic tradition or Islamic hadiths or Islamic ideas. Yes, this must be rejected. I reject hedonism, but rejecting hedonism is not the same as rejecting the pleasure. We must try to find good idea about the place of pleasure in our moral life, because some people think that the life or moral life is just leaving all pleasures or bodily pleasures or pleasures related to the human faculties. I think this is not good. So the question, yes, the very important question, what is the role of pleasure in Eudaimonistic life? What is the role of pleasure in the Hayat al-Tayyibah al-Qur'aniyah? It means that Quranic conception of good life. There is a very good book translated in English also of Fakhruddin Razi, one of the famous scholars, the name is very famous, Razi, Fakhruddin Razi. There is a very good book of him translated into English, is about the pleasure, is about the al-lazza, al-akhlaq. It talks in more details about the role of pleasure in Islamic ethics. I think this is a very good point. So sometimes reject hedonism, but some people think means rejecting pleasure. No, rejecting hedonism as a moral standard, as an ethical theory, doesn't mean that we need to reject all sorts of pleasure and to have a bad idea of pleasure. This is not the same. So this question, yes, one of the important debate must be between eudaimonia and hedonism. What is the relation of them? The second question, one of the criticisms of virtue ethics is that it fails to appreciate the perspective, because the virtuous individual is determinant of right action, but at the same time a source of reasoning of which actions are right, where the ideas originated from, from the pure original of ourselves, touched by external factors. Yes. Well, this is one of the most important issue or difficulties or problems in virtue ethics. There is a circularity. Because I will talk about the problems of virtue ethics or eudaimonistic virtue ethics in the next session, next lecture. I don't go in detail to answer this question, but it is a very good question, because we have two sorts of problem according to this question. Some say that how we can find the good way to improve our virtues. This is if the ways, the goodness of ways are determined by our virtue, so how we can find our virtue? It is supposed to be by good action. So what is the good action? If good action is character, so how it is possible that our virtue character can be acquired by the good action? So there is a secularity, and the second, are moral virtues sufficient to attain happiness, which is an elusive concept. Anyway, from metaphysical dualism point. The second question, and this brother or maybe sister, I have not the name, I'm not sure which person asked. Yes, sorry. Asked about the sufficiency of moral virtue for life. Yes, I accept that moral virtue is not enough, because we need external goods like money, like health. They are also included, or can be, good means for achieving happiness, included or as condition for happiness. So moral virtue by themselves are not sufficient, because we need epistemic virtues also. We need, accuracy of our reason, or practices of our reason in correct way. We need more comprehensive things, but I have not idea about the transitory and illusory concept anyway. Why moral virtue as illusory or transitory concept? I'm not sure what the idea. If you have more explanation, what you mean by point that you say that secondly, are moral virtues sufficient to attain happiness, which is an elusive, illusory and transitory concept anyway. You mean that happiness is illusory and transitory concept? I don't agree with you, because happiness is not transitory, is not elusive. Yes, happiness, if you mean a sort of subjective thing, or life of pleasure, or life of satisfaction of desires, yes, I agree with you. But I thought that happiness is not good translation of eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is, is acting on the plan of God, because God, give us some potential faculties, some powers to reach to this end. He created us to reach to this end. He created us to find this goal. So if we follow this way, this conception of happiness, this conception of eudaimonia, it is not transitory, it is not illusory, it is not, elusive concept. Yes, if we have another idea relate to our desires, our satisfaction, our preferences, yes, I agree with you. But the concept is not outstanding question. Yes. I am not sure if you have any other question on your service. I'm ready to discuss. The lecture, I try to, talk more concrete about the virtues and vices and Islamic conception of good life. In this lecture, I tried to give a frame or philosophical frame for virtue ethics, because virtue ethics claim, to be a philosophical idea about human happiness. But in the case of consequentialism, for example, we have not this idea because they apparently say that consequentialism is a sort of scientific idea of morality because it just calculating, you know, harm and benefit, and so reaching to the point that this, for example, benefit or utilities are more, and then so they say that this is a good thing and bad thing, but they take utilities or harms just experiential, just you know, related to our desires or preferences. So this is not based on philosophical idea of human essence. But in the case of virtue ethics, because they have different philosophical assumptions, because they accepted essentialism, they accepted same essence for human beings. Some rejected. These days, some scholars rejected this idea. They say that we have not, for example, in the existentialism, you see many scholars reject having the same essence for all human beings. They say that every human being is, you know, special case and differ from all, from with respect to all essentials, properties differ from other persons. So this idea is very important, essentialism or rationalism, because according to virtue ethics in our tradition, reason can find the way to happiness, can find the conception of happiness. Yes, in the case of religious scholars, for example, Muslim philosophers, they say that we accept a starting point of, you know, conception of happiness by reason. They accept what reason found, but they complete it. So they didn't reject the rational conception of happiness because they accept the ability of reason. So this is the rational understanding of human happiness, and human happiness is related to human differentia. These are very important issues, philosophical issues. I'm sorry because I, you know, was obliged to talk in this by these terms, but in the second, inshallah, part of this theory, because I try to more concentrate on the special virtues, additional virtues in the religious traditions, like in Aquinas, in Farabi, or in Ghazali, and some errors of or some virtue ethics, and then talk about Islamic idea of virtue ethics according to Islamic understanding of human life or morality, what is good or what is bad in virtue ethics. So this will be in the second chapter of this theory. So at the end of Nicomachean ethics, Aristotle, the most common people cannot enact their own ethics, that the law must enforce politics. So how should we think about? At the end of Nicomachean ethics, Aristotle said most common people cannot enact their own ethics, that the law must enforce policies on them of reason and their unchanging nature. Yes, you are right. There is a, you know, controversy between Kant and Aristotle about the importance of free will, or, and, you know, acting on the basis of free decision and practicing of the human will. According to Aristotle, we may have some virtue by nature. This is possible. without any, more practices. Or we can find some virtue by practicing, follow our virtues without so much difficulty in decision or in preferring this difficult choice, because it is rooted in our, already exercise of this form of action. So it is habitual, it is habited for us. So this is the possible issue in Aristotle, or they call it a sort of moral luck. Some people have by nature, without any difficulty, some virtues, or some people by nature some vices. This is possible for Aristotle, but for Kant, all moral things are related to the practice of will. Everything is related to the practice of will. So for Aristotle, or for Plato, as you know, it is possible sometime some virtues, acquired or grasped by the practices, or by the force of politics, by the force of the ruler. It is possible. Or, for example, Plato said that, we need to cultivate our child by different ways to have virtue. So what is important for Aristotle, you are right, only to have these virtues. This is the best thing for human being, according to Aristotle. But how we can acquire this virtue, this is one of the main problems in Aristotle, as I told it. But for Kant, it is not possible. It is only possible to find morality by the practice of the will of that person, not the will of other person, or by exercising, or by the force. So yes, this is one of the points. So this is what some modern thinkers or liberal thinkers like Popper reject in his famous books, Open Society and Its Enemies, which is famous, rejecting Aristotle and Plato's idea of, giving or forcing the people to have some virtues and some good actions or right actions. This is the problem we have with Aristotle. Yes. So, and first, how should we think about how social life shapes a virtuous life? As I understood in Aristotle's argument, Genus, Eudaimonia, as honor, was that the good is something of our own and hard to take away from us. But at least to me, it seems like good things are often relational and dependent on others. One way of being fulfilled, I think, is being of serving others. How do those human relations? Yes, there is different points in this question. At first, I think we need to distinguish between serving others and having honors. Serving others is a very good idea, because especially one of the merits or benefits of virtue ethics, important points of virtue ethics, is that practicing on the root of virtue, on the basis of virtue, in many cases are good for others. It is not good only for me. To, for example, actions fighting against enemies without any problem is good, because it helps other people also to have a good life. So one of the benefits of virtue ethics is joining the egoism or having a good life for me with having a good life for other people. There is a combination of things. So I accept your point. There's one of the best form of actualizing ourselves, according to Islam also, is actualizing the selves of others, because as I told, we have the same essence. If you actualize your sense or actualize the other people's sense, help the other people to have knowledge, help to other people to have, good situation, good virtues, preventing other from vices, is very good, not for themselves, for me also, because we have one essence, we have same essence. So this is a very good idea, yes, but it doesn't mean that give service or help the others is not always the same as having the honors, because in most cases, you help the other people, but they don't give honor to you. Maybe they reject you. So we must distinguish between two things. One thing is very good service of the others. It is not the same as honor. What Aristotle, reject is that taking, the honor or having degrees in the situation, in the positions in the society as a highest goal. As I told, we reject honor as a highest goal, not as intermediate ends. Sometimes I need to have a position in the society because it is important for me this, but to go further, to go, for example, to cultivate our moral virtues or the other person's moral virtues. So there is a difference between service of the others at first, and it is not the same as having an honor or finding an honor. But in the second point, or the second place, we didn't and don't reject the place of honor. And we see also in Nahj al-Balagha of Imam Ali, sometime he said that the honors of the good people, of the faithful people, which are given to you, signs of your good life, yes, in some cases, but not in all societies, not in the every society. So what Aristotle has in mind in rejecting the honor as basic or final, final end is that it is not final. It is sometimes for achieving other ends. Sometimes I need degree or honor to quality my moral virtues. This is the idea. And as I told, there is a difference between having an honor. So the purpose of a human being is to perfect their differentia, yes, reason and have their only faculties and have their other faculties under the control of reason, yes. Virtue judgments such as those Aristotle made about honor and pleasure could be argued to be beyond reason, and such as those Aristotle made about honor and could be argued to be beyond reason, maybe innate or intuitive. Do you agree or contrary? Yes, this is a very good point. When we are talking about reason, it must not be limited to argumentation, because according to Aristotle, reason has 5 manifestations. Important point. 5 manifestations. One is called nous, the second is called sophia, and the third is called episteme. These 3 manifestations of reason is called theoretical reason, and the 4th is techne, and the 5th is phronesis. So we have 5 manifestations of reason. When we are talking about reason, and controlling our desire. It doesn't mean that all controlling must be our rational or reasoning, because some of manifestations of reason, for example, nous is intuitive knowledge. Nous is reason, but help us to have intuitive knowledge without argumentation. So this is one of the most important manifestation of reason. So reason include this also, as you refer, intuitive. Yes, sometimes by intuition we reject, for example, some idea. Or episteme and sophia. Episteme means that knowledge like physics, mathematics, argumentative knowledge. And sophia means philosophy or wisdom. It means talking about the first causes of the world in general, not talking about appearances of, for example, material physics or in science, in general cosmology, or in general metaphysics. But these are called theoretical reason, reason for grasping knowledge. They are not for changing the world, or they are not for action. But in the case of practical reason, we have two faculty, we have two manifestation. One is called techne, is the base for technology. By techne, we be able to change the world. We product something, we product cars, we product houses, build houses. Techne is technology, is a reason for action, for production, for producing something. And phronesis is a reason for action, is reason for action. Phronesis is the basis of morality, because by phronesis, by our reason, we can have a plan for changing our life from life of lying to the life of truth, from life of the money to the life of virtue. This is by deliberation. Phronesis means deliberation. So when I'm talking about reason, I'm talking about all of its manifestation. So yes, I'm not sure, is there any question or? It seems that there is no question, yes?
Yes, I think we don't have any question. If anybody have question, otherwise we can finish the session.
Yes, but I'm not sure, unfortunately, most of my papers are in Farsi. I'm not sure that you are, ready to read these papers. I try to share some of my English papers, but they are not so much because my original language is Farsi, and so yes, if you can read or understand Farsi, I give the Farsi papers, but surely for the next time I share some of my English papers. Would it be possible to post the pre-class reading list? Oh, yes, also this is important remembrance, and so I give some paper. Maybe paper is better because books need more time, so I will give some paper for next lecture, and as I told, it will be important because it is about Muslim scholars virtue ethics, or some comments of them to virtue ethics, and so sure, Dr. Yes. Yes.
Yes, and also
thank you. Yes,
we will
yes,
also upload the video on YouTube and share the link, inshallah.
Yes, inshallah. Yes,
yeah.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for a great lecture. Inshallah, see you on
Thank
Monday.
you for your attention, and
Yeah,
sorry for changing the you know, platform, and some time, you know, we have delay in starting or beginning the lecture for this change, and so I'm not so expert in these issues, and difficult to change the platforms. I already, you know, I had that platform, but the brother told today that it need to be changed, and sorry for some delay and some inconvenience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Jazakumullah. Thank you.
Jazakumullah.